The world was a dark place in the early 1940s. The skies over Europe were often filled with the ominous drone of bombers, and the nights were lit by the eerie glow of fires from bombed-out buildings. Cities like London endured relentless air raids known as the Blitz, which left a trail of destruction and despair. Nazi Germany, led by Adolf Hitler, had plunged Europe into a brutal war. Millions had already died. The Nazi regime's aggressive expansion and ruthless tactics left a scarred and battered continent in its wake. Entire communities were uprooted, and the very fabric of society was torn apart. Fear and oppression gripped the continent. Under Nazi occupation, civilians lived in constant fear of persecution, deportation, and death. The oppressive regime enforced strict control, and any form of resistance was met with brutal retaliation. The shadow of war loomed over every aspect of daily life. The Allied nations, led by Great Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union, fought back. These nations, despite their differences, united against a common enemy. Their leaders, Winston Churchill, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Joseph Stalin, coordinated efforts to turn the tide of the war. They knew they had to stop Hitler. The stakes were incredibly high, and failure was not an option. The Allies meticulously planned their strategies, understanding that a coordinated and decisive effort was essential to defeat the Axis powers. The year was 1944. The war had reached a critical juncture. After years of intense and grueling conflict, the Allies were preparing for a pivotal moment that could change the course of history. The war had raged for 5 long years. The toll on soldiers and civilians alike was immense. Battlefields across Europe bore the scars of countless clashes, and the human cost was staggering. Yet the resolve to fight on remained unbroken. The Allies knew they needed to strike a decisive blow against Germany. The time had come to take the fight directly to the heart of Nazi-occupied Europe. The success of this mission would be crucial in determining the outcome of the war. The plan was ambitious and risky. It involved a massive amphibious invasion of Nazi-occupied France. This operation, unprecedented in scale, would see thousands of troops landing on the beaches of Normandy. The element of surprise was crucial, and the logistics were mind-boggling. This operation would become known as D-Day. On June 6, 1944, the world witnessed one of the most significant military endeavours in history. To understand the significance of D-Day, consider the consequences if it had failed. A second attempt at landing would have been delayed by at least a year, giving Hitler crucial time to strengthen the Atlantic Wall and complete his campaign of extermination against ethnic minorities. The D-Day invasion, officially known as Operation Overlord, was a massive undertaking. The Allies chose to land on the beaches of Normandy, France. This region, with its varied terrain and defences, presented a formidable challenge. The operation involved landing thousands of troops, tanks and supplies on 5 beaches. These beaches were codenamed Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno and Sword. Each beach presented its own unique challenges. Omaha Beach witnessed the most intense combat during the D-Day landings. German forces, entrenched on the overlooking cliffs, possessed a significant tactical advantage. As Allied troops stormed the beach, they were met with a relentless barrage of machine gun fire, inflicting heavy casualties and transforming the shoreline into a deadly battlefield. The success of the invasion depended on the element of surprise and the bravery of the soldiers. The D-Day invasion was led by some of the most prominent military figures of World War II. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander, oversaw the entire operation. His leadership and determination were instrumental in the success of the invasion. General Bernard Montgomery, a British Army officer, commanded the ground forces. Other key figures included General Omar Bradley, General George S. Patton, and Air Chief Marshal Trafford Lee Mallory. On June 6, 1944, the invasion began shortly after midnight with extensive aerial and naval bombardment as well as an airborne assault. The Normandy landings were the largest seaborne invasion in history. Thousands of ships, landing craft and aircraft descended upon the Normandy coast. The day saw the landing of American, British and Canadian airborne troops. The men landed under heavy fire from gun emplacements overlooking the beaches, and the shore was mined and covered with obstacles such as wooden stakes, metal tripods and barbed wire. The soldiers faced fierce resistance from the German defenders. The beaches were heavily fortified with machine gun nests, artillery batteries and mines. The fighting was brutal and chaotic. Many soldiers were killed or wounded before they even reached the shore. Despite heavy losses, they fought with unwavering determination. By nightfall, approximately 160,000 Allied troops had landed on the beaches of Normandy, with an additional 1 million troops poised to join the fight. The invasion was a major turning point in World War II. The operation, codenamed Operation Overlord, involved meticulous planning and coordination among the Allied nations. The Allied air campaign during Operation Overlord had a dual purpose: to hinder German defences and to mislead them about the actual invasion location. While a significant portion of the bombing targeted Normandy, a larger fraction deliberately struck areas northeast of the Seine, particularly around Pas-de-Calais. This deception aimed to convince the Germans that the main invasion would occur there. Concurrently, the Allies leveraged intelligence gained from decrypting German communications through the Ultra program. This crucial intelligence provided invaluable insights into the deployment of German counterattack forces, significantly aiding the success of the Overlord landings. The successful landing on the Normandy beaches established a crucial foothold for the Allies in Western Europe. This foothold was essential for launching further operations into occupied territories. From this strategic position, the Allies were able to launch a comprehensive ground offensive against Nazi Germany. The invasion opened up a new front, which was critical in stretching German resources and military capabilities. The relentless push of Allied forces from the west complemented the Soviet advance from the east. The D-Day invasion forced Germany into the difficult position of fighting a two-front war. This division of forces significantly weakened the German military, making it increasingly difficult for them to sustain their war efforts. The pressure from both the eastern and western fronts hastened the collapse of Nazi resistance. As the fighting inevitably slowed, the Allies increasingly depended on their artillery and air support. Meanwhile, the German High Command struggled to mount a coordinated counteroffensive, instead deploying armoured divisions piecemeal to reinforce depleted infantry lines. This attritional battle heavily favoured the Allies, whose overwhelming superiority in manpower and resources made victory inevitable. The Allied plan for a steady, phased advance gave way to a dramatic breakout, accelerated by Hitler's refusal to allow his commanders to retreat or abandon positions. His insistence on reinforcing failures played directly into Allied hands, leading to a more decisive victory as German forces were drawn into a losing battle and destroyed. The defence of France left most German divisions either annihilated or reduced to fragments, with some 400,000 troops lost. The liberation of France, which began with the success of D-Day, was a pivotal moment in the war. Towns and cities across France were gradually freed from Nazi occupation, leading to a resurgence of hope and resistance among the French people. The eventual defeat of Nazi Germany was made possible by the sacrifices and heroism displayed on D-Day. The invasion marked a significant turning point in the war, shifting the balance of power decisively in favour of the Allies. The success of D-Day demonstrated the strength and unity of the Allied forces, and it set the stage for the eventual victory over Nazi Germany. The victory on D-Day came at a heavy price. Over 4,400 Allied soldiers lost their lives on that fateful day. Thousands more were wounded or missing in action. The beaches of Normandy were transformed into a scene of unimaginable carnage. The sacrifices made on D-Day serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of war. The bravery and selflessness of the soldiers who fought and died that day will never be forgotten. Their sacrifice paved the way for a brighter future. D-Day marked the beginning of the end of Nazi tyranny in Europe. The successful landing of Allied troops on the beaches of Normandy initiated a series of events that would eventually lead to the liberation of Western Europe from Nazi occupation. Thousands of young men, many of whom were barely out of their teens, stormed the heavily fortified beaches under relentless enemy fire. The bravery and sacrifice of the Allied soldiers who fought on that day will never be forgotten. Their actions helped to shape the world we live in today. The success of D-Day paved the way for the eventual defeat of Nazi Germany and the restoration of peace and democracy in Europe. The impact of this monumental event is still felt in our modern world, influencing international relations, military strategy, and the collective memory of nations. As we remember D-Day, let us honour the memory of those who fought for freedom and strive to create a world where such sacrifices are never again necessary. Commemorative ceremonies, held annually on June 6th, serve as a poignant reminder of the cost of freedom and the importance of preserving it for future generations. The legacy of D-Day will continue to inspire generations to come. The stories of bravery, sacrifice and unity that emerged from that fateful day serve as a powerful reminder of what can be achieved when nations come together for a common cause.